It's really important that we teach children and adults that you can hold grief and joy at the same time. We can hold the hope of heaven alongside with the sadness we feel right now, and those are going to interplay for our whole lives.
We're pleased to welcome best-selling author, speaker, popular podcaster, you know her, Annie F. Downs, and her sister this time, Tatum Green. Tatum, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We've been able to welcome your sister several times. Later on, I'll mention those dates so that you, our listening and viewing family, can go back and see kind of some of our history with Annie. But Annie, you're a friend, and we're just cherishing this time that we have with you and your sister, because together you co-wrote Where Did TJ Go? And I have poured through this book several times and just been blessed every time. It's a book for kids on grief and loss, and it's your story, and we're fortunate to be able to unfold it for you all today. So Annie and Tatum, welcome to the Kinkle Fritz and Friends podcast.
Oh, so happy to be here, Sally. Thanks for having me back. I love getting to hang out with you all, so it's always a treat.
So good. And you've written this incredible book through really your grief and loss of TJ. So Annie, tell us who TJ is.
Yes.
And Tatum, your role in this story as well, because we need to really walk through this and provide this gift to everybody.
Yeah. So TJ is Tatum's son. Tatum and her husband, Jacob, have now a 4-year-old named Sam, who is one of my favorite humans, if not my favorite human on the earth. And TJ is their second son. TJ was in utero, was diagnosed with a life-limiting diagnosis. And we knew pretty early that barring God doing something, the miracle we wanted, that TJ would not live very long. And but a lot of kids with this diagnosis live for hours. And so what we kind of expected, and what you see in Where Did TJ Go, is that TJ would not leave the hospital. But through the kindness of God and medical intervention, we had TJ at Tatum and Jacob's house in hospice care for 5 weeks after his 3 weeks in the ICU. So he lived for 56 days. Is that right, Tatum? 56 days. And so as the aunt in the story, Tatum is the mom in the story. I'm the aunt in the story. I'm not like a casserole maker, as y'all know me well. I'm not going to step in and help in some of those ways. But one of the ways I did want to help was figuring out, how do we help Sam, my other nephew, who at the time is 2, how do we help him process the loss of his little brother, that he watches my sister be pregnant for 10 months and thinking he's going to have a little brother that comes along and plays with them. And how do we help him? And so y'all, this is what I did. Tatum was talking to her counselor. You want to tell this part? Yeah. Tatum was talking to her counselor.
Oh, that's fine. And, I asked her, I was just seeking some wisdom of how to walk my 2-year-old through this, like, really tricky diagnosis and impending loss of his little brother, and what that would mean for his life. And she recommended that we find a book to read with him, which was a brilliant idea, because when you're in that space, the heaviness that I felt as both the mom of TJ and Sam, it kind of, it takes a bunch of your mental resources and capacity just to survive. And so to have a book that someone else has written, that you have words to say to your kid, instead of having to manufacture the words yourself, was such a great idea. And so I called my author sister, because I was like, well, if anybody can find us a book, it would be Annie. I looked online and I saw, there's one popular option. There's a couple of different things, but there wasn't really anything that told, what, as Annie likes to say, a gospel story. There wasn't, what we wanted Sam to understand was that this was really sad and really hard, and that we have hope in Jesus, that we have eternal hope of goodness and healing and wholeness and togetherness. And so we wanted to be able to teach him both of those truths through this. And there just wasn't a book that offered that.
Yeah, I started calling counselors and pastors and mom friends of mine who had been through a similar story where they were raising kids while grieving the loss of another child in their family. And I said, "Tell me the book you read to your kids. What's the book?" And there wasn't one. Yeah. And I was like, "Well, I don't make casseroles, but I can tell a story." And so I really, Sally, I mean, I wrote it for Sam. I literally thought, and I'll tell you, there's 2 other books like this that exist that I've written for families that have never been published. I've written stories for them as a gift to them. A family friend of ours that moved to another city, I wrote them a book about them moving to another city. It's a gift I've given to families before. And so I did this for Sam. And as after TJ passed and Tatum and her husband, and we would read it with TJ, with Sam, we would read it with Sam. A couple of months later, I sent it to my agent and I said, "Hey, we need the book. We needed this book, and there are other families who need this book. They need a reminder that there is good news even in sad stories." And then I thought, the publisher will never publish this, because who wants to publish a kid's book on death and dying siblings? And then Revell, out of their kindness and thanks be to God, they were like, "Yes, this is the book that people have needed." And so they decided to publish it and worked with the illustrator, Jenny Poe, that I've worked with before, to do just an incredible job of making this story come to life.
We appreciate that so much, and we're going to dig into that in just a minute. But I have to explain that Kankel Fritz is not with us today. We're missing him, but he and his wife are off on a missions trip, of course, for the benefit of kids around the world. And the interesting thing is, Tatum, Mike and Becky, or Kankel Fritz and his wife Becky, their son's name is Sam. And I just thought that's so beautiful, and most of our listening and viewing audience knows they lost their precious daughter, Abby, just a couple months ago, 21 years old with special needs. And they cared and loved her. And so did we. What a privilege that we got to live alongside Abby for quite a long time before she passed. So this book is especially tender, just even to us as the Kankel Fritz family here, radio family, if you will. And so I just appreciate that you wrote that dedication to Sam. And as you said, Sam was just the center of the whole vision behind writing this book. So do you remember what you wrote there?
Oh, yeah. I have the book in front of me, but
okay.
It says, "To Sam and to all the brothers and sisters like Sam who are learning how to live in a world with good news and sad stories. You are brave and you are loved."
Oh, beautiful.
That is.
Yes.
Wow.
It's true. One of the things is if this was the only copy that existed, it was still for Sam. And so so we wanted it to be dedicated to him, because when he's 30 and reading it to his kids, I want them to see, oh, this was for Sam. This was always for our Sam. So it was important to me. But there are so many, 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage. There are so many families. And as y'all know, as you've experienced yourself and friends and family, being alongside parents who are grieving while they are raising kids who are also grieving is a deep challenge. Yeah. And so any resources we can do that partner and help the parents, because it's hard. I was grieving as an unmarried person, my nephew dying, and other people in our lives who have died. I was not trying to raise someone else who was grieving. And so we hope this really serves families and serves parents in their own grief.
And I think I don't know that anybody goes untouched by this. If it's not you, it's somebody you know. And I feel like the older I get, the more people I know that go through the loss of a child. Obviously we were talking about Kankel Fritz and his daughter who passed last summer, and that rocked the Kankel Fritz and Friends morning show. And, walking alongside him through that was definitely a unique experience. I have a friend that just had a baby, and there's a genetic condition that took the life of their son about a decade ago. And this little girl has the same genetic issue. Wow. I can't remember the name of it, but I can tell by the way they speak, they don't think, they know her time is limited. So what was your ultimate, like if you could pick your ultimate vision and hope for this book? Because you're right, so many people are touched by this, and obviously kids as well.
Yeah. You know, Missy, it's been funny because I put funny in quotes. There have been so many people who've reached out and said, can I read this book to my kids? My husband just died. Or someone DM'd me this morning and said, a grown-up said, my mother just passed away and my kids are really grieving the loss of their grandmother. Can I read this to them? And the answer is yes. It may not be your exact story, but but the ultimate hope is teaching, and because it goes from Tatum being pregnant and TJ not coming home, TJ dying in the hospital, and then Sam asked, where did TJ go? And we go into this experience of what heaven is like. And then we go back to Sam is still sad. And so I think because that's really important. It's really important that we teach children and adults that you can hold grief and joy at the same time. We can hold the hope of heaven alongside with the sadness we feel right now. And those are going to interplay for our whole lives. So Tatum, you can give your thoughts and answer to that. What's your number one hope? But my number one hope is that adults and children get a reminder of the practice of holding what is true and what you feel, even when they don't match.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's so similar. And I would say also the beauty of reminding the parents of the good place where their kids are now. You know, we just don't, I think we don't talk about heaven enough. And one of the great gifts of TJ's life, and actually, you know, TJ was my 6th pregnancy, and we only have Sam who is here with us. And so we are very familiar with loss and grief and miscarriages. But the beautiful gift that those 4 sweet babies and TJ have given us is this heightened view and focus on the life that is to come with Jesus, and the beauty that we have to look forward to, and the hope that is unwavering despite the hard, despite the grief, in the midst of the grief, that it does happen at the same time. And so my hope for this book is that it would rekindle hope in parents and families' hearts to remember our eternal hope and the goodness that we have in front of us.
That's so sweet. Well, and yeah, that's another thing. Miscarriage, depending on when that happens, if you have another child who's watching that, then all of a sudden, you never go to the hospital and have the baby. That can be confusing as well. So just using maybe Sam as an example, obviously there's the main question, where did TJ go? But what are some of the other questions that came out of this experience that maybe you're hoping this book will help with?
I think there's a lot of questions about what heaven is like that we've talked through. And in fact, one of the things we had Jenny do when she was illustrating it is a truth we know from scripture is that the streets are made of gold, right? But we didn't have the streets gold in the book because what we really wanted was for kids to look at heaven and go, hey, that's not so different. Where my brother or sister or grandmother or dad is they didn't evaporate. They are actually somewhere. And that zoo kind of looks like a zoo, except TJ's riding a giraffe, so we really tried, Misty, to go through the words and the illustrations to say to kids and families, heaven is real. It's real. Now, the streets are going to be made of gold. That's going to be wild to see, but it looks so not believable that we thought, let's make it look believable plus. And then, so that's one of the things that we've gotten to talk to Sam about. And in the illustrations, we left a lot of space for kids to go, for a parent to say, what other animals do you think might be at a zoo in heaven? Or what other sports do you think we might play in heaven? Or the page with all the trees, and it says, we know there are trees in heaven. Scripture says it. Do you plan to climb trees in heaven? Do you think your granddad can climb trees in heaven? It just opens up the illustrations open up a lot of space for more conversation about what a kid can imagine heaven to be like. What other kind of things is Sam asking?
I think my favorite one that I remember, he was like, are there playgrounds in heaven? I bet there are, buddy, but it just shows the innocence and imagination and the curiosity. Kids are so inquisitive, and and they love to dream and imagine. And so just to have a launching pad for that, where, you know, like there's not playgrounds in this book, but he's just thinking of all the things that he loves that are fun. And he's like, well, must be in heaven, there must be these wonderful things that are fun that I love, you know?
The things that God's given us that we love translate to heaven in a child's way. And I've just never had that presented to me before. So that was one of those aha moments as I read the book. I was just like, that is a God-given idea. Like, how perfect is that to talk to the kids about heaven in a way that they relate to with their playgrounds, with their animals, going to the zoo, the things that they love so much. So you said it earlier, Annie, and I loved it. And I opened up to the first place you said it in the book. And you said there is good news in sad stories. And so I just have to say thank you. This is, you hear that phrase, a labor of love. This is a labor of love because you have to feel the pain in order to tell the joy. So I'm not going to forget that phrase, that there's good news in sad stories. But made me think about sad stories. And thanks to Garth Brooks, we have a song called Unanswered Prayers.
Yeah.
He's talking about some lost high school girlfriend, but we're talking about something much more impactful. So this is the tough question. You know, what do we do with that phrase, unanswered prayers? And I'm just even going to challenge it. Is there such a thing as unanswered prayers?
I think definitely, because my heart was that TJ would be healed and whole here, right?
Yep.
So I think for sure that is a prayer. That was a desire of my heart, that TJ would be healed and made perfect here on earth. That went unanswered, but it's because we live in a broken world and none of us is immune to that, unfortunately. But I think that the experience of living such a painful unanswered prayer, but walking with a God who is so kind and so good, to be reminded, to learn what it's like to remind yourself of his goodness and his kindness and his character and who he is. You know, one of the verses that I always come back to is Isaiah 54:10, which says, though the mountains have they depart and they crumble into the sea, your unfailing love, your goodness and your kindness is always with me because you have compassion on me. And you know, when mountains are the things that give us our bearings, right? Whenever you're lost, you can look up and see, okay, well, I used to live in Denver, and you always know where you are because the mountains are in the west. Yeah. So no matter where you are in the city, you look up and the mountains are in the west. Well, if the thing that gives you your bearings is suddenly gone, it's very disorienting. And I think that that's part of the hope that I had, and I hoped to live a life that had mostly answered prayers and desires of my heart. But that's just not the reality of life on earth. And the mountains, they do crumble, but God's goodness and his unfailing kindness are with us because he has compassion on us. So clinging to that and holding to that in the midst of unanswered prayers.
No one who knows Tam and I will be surprised about this, but I disagree with her. So I do not think there are unanswered prayers. I think the actual wrestle I've experienced is God answered. He just didn't answer the way I wanted him to. And so he doesn't leave.
Oh, sure. He doesn't ignore.
Yeah.
No. He answers. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So I that was my bigger wrestle, and continues to be my bigger wrestle, is you do not answer the way I want you to answer. What do I do with that? And so that has been I think that song is very sweet. I think it's bad theology.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a very nice love song, and I wish Garth Brooks many millions more for the work that he does. But I think when we consider that something we ask God for is unanswered, then that leads us down a path to, there are times where God chooses not to respond to me. And that's not true. He always responds to us. It just does not mean we get what we want. Yeah. And so I think that's the wrestle that I have had. But I mean, she's not wrong. It just is semantics. But I think it's important to remove that phrase from our faith. You can sing that phrase all day long on a July afternoon in a country fair. But
Earworm.
that phrase in your theology is going to lead you down some paths that are going to be very discouraging, and God doesn't intend that for us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that very thought of an unanswered prayer just is a lack of hope, and God would never want us to be without hope. And so I think that's where I was coming back to. There's good news and sad stories.
Yeah.
The
I think
truth
that's
of it
really
is,
important. That sentence really matters. There's good news even in sad stories, because that also gives us permission to laugh at a funeral. And it gives us permission to smile through a breakup. And it gives us permission to, when we're praying and don't get what we want, when we're sitting with someone who is dying, or when we've lost a job that really matters to us, sometimes we can feel like, am I allowed to enjoy this TV show in the middle of this grief? Am I allowed to laugh at that joke I saw on Instagram in the middle of this sadness? And the answer is yes. There is good news in the middle of sad stories. So you're allowed, quote, quote, to feel both things at the same time. And I think sometimes we are taught you need to be all the way sad or all the way happy. And I have yet to experience that.
oh, that's just, it's just beautiful that we can do that we can have all the feels through whatever we're going through, because we have that hope, because of what you are explaining to the children here. Heaven is going to be a reflection of all the things that we love. And just, I like simple things. So I just, this book was a blessing to me as I thought about our loss with Kankelfritz's Abby, and thinking of all the things. And Misty, how many times has Kankelfritz reflected on, I wonder if Abby is, and then he relates something about, enjoying cookies in heaven. And it just always reminds me that there is something to smile about, and that the children that we have, they've been a blessing, and they will continue to be a blessing. So you call this a book for kids on grief and loss. And truly, I can't think of a more challenging conversation than to talk with a child about losing a sibling. But you took this on, the two of you together. And I'm especially touched by the way you relate to the children by relating to the normal experiences that we've just been talking about, but this is down to the whole physical breathing and heartbeats and the things that keep us, alive.
Yeah, sorry. I'm thinking about it as you're talking about it. One of the things that really mattered to me, when we think about John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And Jesus says, I came to bring abundant life. But the opposite of stealing is a gift. The opposite of killing is giving life. And the opposite of destroying is building. And so what I wanted to do, and what Tatum and I really worked on in the book, is every way that something was stolen, killed, or destroyed from TJ's life, what does heaven restore? What does heaven give him? What life does heaven bring? Yes. And what gets built? And so we went through a lot of things that Sam loves, like playing soccer and building things. I mean, again, because it was originally for Sam. So we wanted to say to Sam, all these things you love that TJ can't do now, TJ will be able to do in heaven. TJ, his lungs and his heart may not be super strong on earth, but when he gets to heaven, he can run and jump and play and do all the things that his body wouldn't have allowed on earth. So we really wanted to open up a door that allowed for parents and kids, or grandparents and kids who are reading this, or aunts or teachers, to say, okay, what's something here that you love to do that your grandfather wasn't able to do with you, or your dad wasn't able to do with you, or your sibling wasn't able to do? What's the opposite? Okay, well, if they weren't able, so Abby, if Abby wasn't able to enjoy cookies well here on earth, or run around, or jump up and down, or do anything of that nature, what can she do now? What is the opposite of what was stolen, killed, or destroyed? And so that's kind of we hope we've opened up enough doors that through the illustrations and through the words of the book, that it allows, like Tatum said, like, are there playgrounds in heaven? It allows these other questions to be like, well, then can we do this? Can we do this? And hopes of showing the opposite of what was stolen.
Wow.
Yeah, King talks about that often.
Yeah.
That Abby's out of her wheelchair now.
Yes, he does. Yeah. Tatum, what is it for you that you, when you dream about TJ and what he's doing? And I know you lost several other babies due to miscarriage. So you've got a big family greeting when you get there to heaven with Jesus. But what is it that brings you comfort just thinking about TJ and his life in heaven?
One of my favorite things is, there's so many, the pictures we have in the scripture of heaven, there's a lot of worship going on. And there's a lot of popular worship songs that say things like, joining with heaven, we're singing. And so whenever we sing worship songs like about God's holiness, I feel like I'm joining with my kids. Like I'm getting to do what they're doing. And it's one of my favorite things. Like actually at church yesterday, we sang Holy, 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 which is one of the songs, the old hymn. Yeah. And it's one of the songs that we sang at TJ's funeral because of that. I wanted to join in with what heaven is singing, which is holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. And so that's one of my favorite things to picture, is that we get to do it with them in that moment,
How beautiful is that?
It is. One of the things Kenkel Fritz talked about, especially right after it happened, is just how difficult it was to see people who didn't know what to say. Like just that awkward tension of what on earth do I say? Like this is a devastating loss, whether maybe it was just because they couldn't relate, they've not lost a child or known anybody who's lost a child, or it's just, and I'll admit, even I was like, well, do we talk about it? What do we do? Because you don't want to hurt somebody, but you want to be able to walk through that with them because you love them. And so I'm thinking, even as somebody is reading this to their child, maybe it kind of helps them figure out a way to be a good friend as well in the midst of something like that.
Yeah, and we actually had David Thomas, who's a really well-respected family therapist, part of the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. He wrote a letter in the back of the book to parents to help them, like, here is some other resources and ways you can talk through this with your kids. And that way, one of the reasons we did that is, A, we're not the experts at how you do this and how you don't say awkward things, but so I'm the expert at writing the story. David Thomas is the expert at helping parents parent well. But the other thing Missy gets to do is you can feel safe taking a casserole and where did TJ go to a family who's experienced loss, because not only is it the story, but there's resources in the back to help with it. But I'll tell you, the thing I watched that I was so impressed with Tatum about is, TJ was sick her whole pregnancy, and everywhere she went, doctors, nurses, people in the grocery store were like excited that she was pregnant, knowing what might happen if the Lord didn't answer the prayers the way we were asking him to. And it was just, people do the best they can with what they have and with the information they have. They don't know how to talk to someone who's lost a kid. They don't know how to talk to someone who is pregnant, but the child has a life-limiting diagnosis. Presence matters, though. Saying something always matters and helps so much. And we know people, I think, people are trying. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to say the wrong thing. They are doing the best with what they have and what they've experienced.
I think that, one of the things I've learned in grief is that everyone grieves so differently. I have some friends who, after like some miscarriages, they didn't want to talk to anybody. And I'm the opposite. I needed people. I wanted to talk. And so everyone is just different. And so it kind of maybe feels like a minefield that you don't know how to interact with your friend. But I think what I have experienced is that anyone whose heart is tender toward me, that is mostly concerned with me and not concerned about their discomfort in the conversation, when they are attuned to the grieving person, I think it's pretty hard to get it wrong if that's your heart. If your heart is to see your friend who is grieving and to be with them in it, it is it's pretty hard to mess that up.
You know what? I am reminded, I think we have a common friend in Bob Goff.
Yeah.
And he just wrote a new book. And in there, he says, approach somebody by saying, what does it feel like to be you right now? I heard that and I had to put it on repeat. I was like, that is brilliant. If we walked into any relationship, we no longer need to feel uncomfortable, because now we've taken that pressure that you're talking about, Tatum, off of ourselves. And I need to say the right thing. And that's where we slip up. So Bob was saying, walk into a conversation and say, what does it feel like to be you right now? And I was like, Lord, bring that to mind every time. I need that whole approach to relationships. And then you just enter into what's been said to you. I'm sad right now. I'm happy right now. You no longer have to be swimming in that tide pool that you get weary and think, oh dear, it's easier just to walk away.
Yeah.
That's right. I
love that.
I want to go back to Jenny real quick. I heard you mention it earlier because the illustrations in this book are incredible. Tell us about her.
Yeah, I've gotten to work with her for the other 2 kids' books I've written so far. And we knew we were asking a big ask to get her to be a part of this book, because not only is it a whole new concept, but also it is my sister and her husband and her 2 sons that Jenny illustrated, and it really looks like them. I mean, she went through and read the whole Caring Bridge. Yeah. She went through and drew us all the characters in the book months before she was working on the book to be like, is this what you want him to look like? Is this what y'all look like? Really, one of the only changes is Tatum's glasses were sharp. Originally, they went down, and Sam said it looked like she had angry eyes. And so we had Jenny change those angry eyes. But it was just incredible. She really treated this like a mission she was on to share this story. And that is such a gift from an illustrator to the reader and to the authors, but to the reader as well. I'll tell you a couple of Easter eggs y'all may not know that are in the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, for starters, on the zoo page, there's a puppy playing in mud, and his name is Muddy Puppy. And Sam and I, for his entire life, have had an imaginary friend named Muddy Puppy who does all sorts of things. He runs a taco truck. He makes messes all the time. I mean, Muddy Puppy is the best. So, yeah, we tell stories of Muddy Puppy all the time. So that was like a little Easter egg for Sam that Muddy Puppy would be in the book with us. And the other one is there's a page where Jenny illustrated Jesus reading a book to TJ. And TJ's sitting in his lap reading a book, and the cover of the book that TJ is reading is another one of my kids' books. And so Jesus is reading TJ one of my books in heaven, which is just like so special that Jenny, I mean, I didn't ask for that. Jenny just did that as a gift to us. And I just thought that was, and the illustration she did of Jesus is so lovely. So it's just a beautiful page. But then for it to be that Jesus would pick up one of my books to read to TJ is so sweet to me.
Wow.
That just gave me goosies all over. I don't know why. I'm just like, wow. That's amazing.
Well, to me, that illustrates that the way that he knows us all so intimately and individually.
Yeah,
that's good.
That would mean something to TJ and to you. I love that. Oh, how sweet.
I know. They're the insider Easter eggs for you.
There it is.
Yeah,
I know. Cool. It's so sweet.
And I love it. So it's her book that's called So Happy to Know You, which the whole premise of the book is that God creates each of us with specific and unique aspects of who we are with a great purpose. And I love that even though TJ only lived for 56 days, God created him with a unique purpose and unique giftings and unique aspects of who he is. And so I love that it's that book because I believe that is so true about TJ.
Tatum read TJ the book too. So he read the book on Earth too. So
although, most people it would be easy to discount and just think, he was just a baby that just lived 56 days. But I deeply believe that God put special things inside of him. And so I just love that that's the book that he's reading.
And touched so many lives. Yeah.
Yes.
Love that. Let's talk about sisters.
okay.
Let's take a little sidetrack. I have 2 sisters. One has passed away, and the other. So I'm the oldest, and the other one's the youngest. And sisters are interesting relationships and finding our way. So have you always been just this cozy, sitting side by side like that? What's your sister story?
No. We're only 15 months apart.
And then we have a younger sister who's 6 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Okay, similar.
Yeah. And so, I think one of the gifts of our lives is we were never forced to be friends. And so I appreciate that our parents really taught us to be individuals and really leaned on your gifts are your gifts. And so I think as adults, that's made us be who we want to be and also appreciate in each other what is true in each other. And so yeah, I mean, yeah,
We weren't besties growing up. Far from it. We argued a lot. But I would say that, like, especially in the last few years, it's been really sweet. Our family relationship as a whole has changed so much since Sam was born, and then and again when TJ was born. These boys have brought us so close together as a family, and so that's been a really sweet gift.
There's actually a couple of cousins that we all act like siblings because my parents were part of raising some cousins of ours. And so actually after TJ's death, we decided as a family to start going on vacation together because we had never done that. We just do Christmas. We just do Christmas. And then we were like, wait, why are we not? And so it's really amazing what TJ has gifted our whole family in his life and in his death is that now we go on big fam vacay every summer and spend 4 days together with all of our there's 6 of us siblings.
Cousin siblings.
Yeah. And most are married with kids. And so there's like 20 of us that do vacation together every summer now. And so it's really fun. Being adults in relationship with your siblings has been really fun with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it just touched me that as sisters, you could share this story with us all. And that, Annie, you could write this for your sister Tatum, and Tatum, that you could accept what Annie's viewpoint was. I mean, I know you were integral in being involved in telling the story, but Annie wrote it, and it didn't go past me that was really a gift, Tatum, that you gave to Annie to be trusted with telling this story.
Well, so generous because Tatum and her family don't have public lives. I chose to have a public life.
Exactly.
Right? Like I've chosen, and my family has been shrapneled for the last 10 years over me choosing to have a public life. But, they didn't have to make their story public. When we wrote this for Sam, when I wrote it for Sam, it was for Sam. And then Tatum and her husband Jacob, and Sam, to the ability of his own voting, kind of got to decide, are we willing to make this is their faces. Like that's what they look like. Sam has red hair. Tatum already says it's like parenting a celebrity, just how red his hair is everywhere. And so it was really generous of them to say, okay, our sister who's chosen a public life and chosen to do her job publicly can now take our family into the public sphere on behalf of helping other families. That is like an incredible generosity from Jacob and Tatum and Sam and TJ for all 4 of them to let us let the rest of us know their story. I mean, his entire life was not on the internet. Like we made a decision as a family that from TJ's birth until probably 2 weeks after his death, that I never talked about it on socials, and that no one knew. It was very, I felt a little cut in half because I was this one thing publicly online, and privately my nephew was dying, but it was the right thing for our family. And so for them to go, okay, now you can talk about it publicly. And not only that, but in 2 years, we're also going to let this be a children's book that thousands, maybe millions of families will end up reading, is such a generosity to the rest of the world.
Well, and I think too, like Annie was so invested in our life and in TJ's life in that season. She really, was so deeply instrumental in every aspect of our life in the season of TJ's life, which was such a gift. But one of the things that I think about is that this book, the world needs this book. The world needed a story that had the hope of heaven that you could talk to your kids about. And Annie is choosing to use this platform that she so faithfully obeyed the Lord and created and worked so hard to steward. And so I feel so grateful that she's choosing to use her platform to share this story to help other families. And, there are a ton of families like us who have lost children, and there are not very many who get to share their kid with the world. And there are not very many who get to see with their eyes on earth the way that their kid's life mattered on earth. And so it feels like such a gift to me that I get to share TJ with the world, and that I get to see how his little 56 days are able to be a gift to other families.
That's so
Yeah,
sweet. We were, oh, sorry,
ahead.
Sally. No, I was
go
going to say,
ahead.
we were just talking on the show recently about how you rarely connect with people who don't ever reveal any struggle. We connect to one another and our struggles that we can, either understand or they're common to both of us. So I think that is a really beautiful gift to give somebody, is vulnerability and just, sharing that, because so many are going to benefit from this.
It's one of the reasons I wanted Tatum to really be a co-author on it. And the first few times she read to Sam, she was like, hey, he's bored in the middle. There's too many words, right? So she really helped take the book from the mom point of view of actually sitting with the 2-year-old and the 3-year-old and the 4-year-old and going like, hey, this isn't exactly right. But Missy, that's exactly why, is that I wanted infused into this book. There's a spiritual side of this, that when the mom infuses her own hope and pain into the book, the moms who read it will know the difference. And the women who read it will know, because I had joy and pain in this too, as in the loss of my nephew. But I think it mattered to me what you're saying, Misty, is there's a world where we never told this story publicly, except sharing that my nephew passed away. And that would have been fine. That wouldn't have been bad. This isn't good. That's bad. Nothing of that nature. But we also decided, kind of as a family, that we're going to let God make beauty from ashes here. And the end of the story will not be the one that the enemy wants people to remember of our loss. The end of the story is going to be the story of hope, and the story of how many families, the seed multiplication of this is incredible, right? It's just what a joy. And for our friends listening and watching, you don't have to be an author to see the seeds of that you plant multiply like this. It's just by telling your story to the people around your table, or who follow you on Instagram, or who are in your church or in your community. You just tell your story to 4 other people, and your seed has multiplied. We're just because of my job, we get to do it in a public way, but I hope people hear, man, this is how Annie and Tatum got to do it, but we can do it in our stories too, and watch God do something with the seed of sorrow that we planted.
Powerful. And what a gift you've given to each other. In your differences, you have become stronger together. And I just love that. And I wanted to bring that out in the two of you, because what a beautiful example. No matter what kind of family relationships we have, the one thing that is consistent is we're all different from each other, no matter how close we are. And so for the two of you to come together to bless all of us with this book is so extraordinary, and such a blessing that you have given us to help be a small part of telling the story, that this book is available, that it can make a difference. I want to quickly touch, because I think it's really important. We've talked about it lightly, but the input from David at the back, the 3 simple points that he made there, I think are, again, I don't think it's too strong to say life-changing for a parent walking a child through a difficult time.
Yeah, especially when they're doing their own grieving, right, Sally? That is the challenge, as we talked about, is these parents aren't watching their kids suffer without their own suffering. They're deeply suffering. So the points David made were follow the kids' lead, invite more questions, and when you're ready, move toward purpose, right? Plant those seeds and watch them multiply. But one of the things he says a lot is be actual and factual. And so that's why in the book it says TJ died. We didn't beat around the bush and go, TJ went to be with the Lord. And we wanted to be very factual, so that where a parent might struggle to say that, a parent will not struggle to read that off the page. And so, man, David's wisdom, Sally, we have therapists in our family that have helped our family, that helped Tatum and Jacob and Sam, that have helped me in my life. I'm so thankful for counselors and therapists that speak into our lives and help us find health where we want to find health. But especially through this grieving process, having David write that for us was just such a gift to offer families that are reading this to their kids.
Yeah.
Love that.
So important. And to free a family up to realize the power of getting help when you need the help. This really helps to point that out as well. So go ahead, Tatum.
Oh, I was just saying, absolutely. Like it's invaluable. I don't know how I would have coped in the last 7 years. My first miscarriage was in 2016, 9 years. Oh my goodness, 9 years. I don't know how I would have coped over the last 9 years without professionals who understand mental health and emotional health and relational health. I'm so grateful.
Yeah. Well, last words. Our time is just, I knew that would happen. Anything else you want to share?
Do you have anything else?
I am just so grateful. Thank you for having us on to share our story. I guess the only thing to share is that we are signing, Annie is signing some really sweet book plates. You want to tell them about that?
Yeah. So one of the things we noticed and have paid attention to is how much it matters to families that people remember the names of their children who have died. Okay. And so, like Abby. And so one of the things that mattered to us was making a way for us to remember the names. And so on wheredidtjgo.com, there's a place where you can fill out a form, and I'll sign a book plate in loving memory of and write your child's name or the grandparent's name or whoever it is, and we'll sign it, mail you to. It's totally free. You just order the book wherever you want the book, and we will mail you a signed book plate. We've gotten to do, Misty and Sally, y'all, hundreds so far.
Wow.
Over 300. It's just been, and some of them have 5 and 6 names on them. It is heartbreaking. And also we're so thankful. That's exactly what we want to do, is we want to remember every one of those kids' names. I read them out loud, every single one. And so we get to do that. So if that would serve anybody, we'd be very happy to do that. It's at wheredidtjgo.com. And the other thing I would say, Sally, the final thing I'd say is, I don't know all of our friends who are listening and watching. I don't know their friends who have lost children, but they do. And the only way we can get this book to them is if our friends who are watching and listening tell their friends who have lost children. And so we need help getting this book in front of the families that need it. And so anyone who'd be willing to share about it to other families so that we can help as many families as possible with this gospel reminder of good news, even in sad stories, we would be so appreciative. We'd be so appreciative.
That's great. And we'll put all your contact information down below where you can find it, especially wheredidtjgo.com. Thank you, Annie and Tatum, for visiting with us today and for writing this book, because out of your pain, you have created a great blessing for all of us. It's tender, it's sincere. It's a story that doesn't shy away from hurt, even as it offers comfort and hope to those left behind. So we know that we can find you at wheredidtjgo.com. Where else can we find you?
Oh, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs everywhere. You know that. And Tatum doesn't have a public life. So if you need to get to her, just come to me.
What a gift, Tatum. Thank you so very much. God bless you both as you go and tell even more about TJ and the hope that you have found in and through the grief that you've experienced. It's such a delight, as always, to visit with you, and hoping to do it again soon. Actually, we're also going to list a couple other visits we've had with you, Annie. You can find other conversations we've had with Annie. Our November 20th, 23, we talked about So Happy to Know You. And back in August of 22, we talked about Chase the Fun. So we'll put those links down there too. So you've become a very good friend of Kinkle Fritz and Friends, and we appreciate you both. Big hugs.
Thank you, Sally. Thanks, Misty. Hey, send our love to Kinkle Fritz, and we remember Abby. We remember Abby. So
thank you.
Thank you.